stripes he is healed. And as soon as he finished, I leapt in the car, I went back and collected Luke from the play school, brought him back at the house, came in, everybody left by then, but John was there. So I said to John, please, will you pray with Luke? He's deaf. And Luke looked at him and said, yes. Well, John looked at Luke and said, well, okay, I'll do that, no problem. And I said, why? Horizontal, and he walked, so he walked like this, so he could see where he was going, like that. And he wore it all the time. He wore it in the bed, he wore it in the bath, he wore it when we went out. It was really getting to be a problem. Have a word about the hat, I said to John. John said, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. So he sat down, we put Luke between us. John put his hands on Luke's head, prayed in tongues, and then he suddenly cast out the spirit of deafness in that child. And then he prayed in tongues a little longer. And then he said, and Lord, I ask you to take away the fear that this child has of things falling on his head. And I thought, well, I haven't dropped anything on his head. I remember that. I have broken an unbreakable cup over Charles's head. So maybe it was an inherited fear. Anyway, so I just said, thank you, John, thank you very much, and we left. And Luke could speak so I could understand, but it wasn't distinct, really. And as I put him in the car, in his car seat, he said, I didn't like that man. Oh, I said, why didn't you like him, darling? Made my ears hurt, he said. Oh, I said, really? So I rushed home, and that night when I was putting him to bed, in the complete dark, because he was beginning to lip read, I spoke to him, and he could hear every single thing I said. It was just so lovely. In that instant, he had been healed. Anyway, what was lovely was people said to us afterwards, well, he wasn't really deaf, was he? He just had a bad day at the doctor's. But, when he got up, he never wore his hat again. So we had a very visual sign that our son had been touched by God. And it was lovely because when we'd go out shopping, he'd be walking and people would come up and say, oh, hello, Luke, where's your hat? And I'd be able to say, oh, well, let me tell you what happened. And it was a wonderful little evangelistic tool that I took with me. But, children are so funny. A week later, I was shopping. I was in Uxbridge and I was in W.H. Smith's, so I was just chosen what I wanted, and I was walking to the checkout, and I was pushing the pushchair, and Luke was walking beside me. Tom was in the pushchair. Luke was walking beside, and suddenly Luke stopped, turned round, he put his hands on Tom's head, and he said, "Yabba dabba doo." The son who, what is that? What I wanted? Is that was okay? Was it okay? I give you that.
Thank you so much. Great. Thank you too. I mean, it's wonderful that we have this now 39-year-old who has perfect hearing, because when he went back to the doctor and he was checked again, the doctor thought he was a different child. Thought Sue had brought another one instead. And then he thought the nurse had given him the wrong notes. Because he said he's got, not just is his hearing okay, it's actually A1. It's perfect. And what's happened? So Sue told him. But you see, the wonderful thing about when you think about the gifts, the charismatic gifts of the Holy Spirit, which are gifts that are given to us for other people. So we are the vehicle that the Lord has decided to use, that the Spirit is going to use. When you look at this story of Luke, there are several gifts being used. First of all, Sue has faith. And faith of that sort is not faith to believe in God, the basic faith. It's faith for a specific thing to happen. And as she was listening to this speaker, she had faith that if she brought Luke, this was the day he would be healed. So acting on that faith, she goes and brings him. She tells John, the man, that he's deaf, and they sit Luke down. And then John prays in tongues. Tongues is a gift of the Holy Spirit. And it allows you to enter into the mind of God and be open to God in a new way. Because you're not giving your ideas, you're praying in this language which you don't fully understand. You're using it to bring you close to the Lord. So that's the second gift. Then the third gift is discernment of spirits. Because what John then receives from the Lord is the knowledge that Luke's problem requires deliverance ministry. It's not just normal, straightforward healing. There's been a problem of some sort, and he needs to be delivered from a spirit. Now, Luke had actually had a very traumatic birth, so that could have been the time when something happened. So John says to the Lord to set Luke free and delivers him from the spirit of deafness. Now, we'd prayed for Luke, but we just asked for healing of his deafness. But actually, it's more focused than that. So there's that gift, discernment of spirits. And then, of course, the result of that gift, as John prayed for him, was he was healed. The spirit is dispatched, and he's healed. And then John had a word of knowledge about the hat. Luke was obviously afraid of something falling on his head. Now, why that was, I've no idea. But when John sets him free from that, he no longer has to wear his hat. So you've got a series of the gifts, the charismatic gifts, being used to bring one 4-year-old little boy from deafness to A1 hearing. And this is the way gifts are often used. You know, we get prompted by the Spirit to use one of the gifts of discernment or wisdom or whatever it is when we minister to other people. And then the fruit of all this, so we've got the gifts being used, and then Luke is manifesting fruit because he's so happy that he's been healed. And he attributes that to the Lord. And when people ask him, he tells them. So he's living now in a new way. He's living differently because he's manifesting the fruit of the Holy Spirit in his life. So these things are really extremely important. And I think we just have to be used by God and be totally open to take the step he's giving us. Faith that this was the moment for Luke's healing, and gone and brought him to be ministered to. So that was the trigger. And that's the